It might seem a little strange in summertime to talk about work. Summer is often the time when we think about how do we get away from work. Well, this is part of an ongoing series about the mission of God's people. It's about a book. It's following a book by the same name by Christopher Wright. And so we have talked about the mission of God's people from different angles. We've explored, amongst other things, how we as a people live redeemed lives, bear witness and proclaim the gospel, and care for creation. You might remember 2 weeks ago we had Rick Faw from Arosha, and he was talking about creation care. So my task and privilege and opportunity is to explore the whole idea of work. How does work, as we understand it, fit into God's mission for us as a people? But before I get more into that, the next slide, please. Everybody keeps asking me when I'm going to retire. What's with that? Well, what's with the rocking chair? Do you think that would suit me? Do you think I should use a rocking chair in my retirement? When we were camping recently and there was a hammock, and I thought that would be really nice to have a hammock. Nobody in our camping troop had a hammock. It was another crew that had the hammock. Thought that would be nice. Anyway, one of my first thoughts is, how old do you think I am, actually? Okay, so full disclosure, I'm 55, and I guess that's a reasonable question because some people actually do retire at 55, Freedom 55 and all that. Or at least at 55, most people think, well, surely you're thinking about retirement. You have some idea of what's going to happen coming up. So, but before I retire, it's a really good question, and as I've reflected on this, those two go well together because I wonder, why do I work anyway? I mean, why not retire, right? So, and many of you are retired. Actually, how many of you, by show of hands, would consider yourself retired? Okay, so that's roughly half of all of you. So another question I have for you, and I appreciate your feedback. When you hear that somebody says, I'm going to retire soon, or I just retired, what would you respond with? Congratulations? Have fun? Interesting, I'll pray for you. Okay, so maybe there's some experience here about those who have retired. What are you going to do? Okay, that's a question that I have, actually. So I would retire to then do what exactly? Okay, so for many people, retirement is kind of like the pinnacle achievement in life. You finally broke free of the need to earn money to live. Liberation Day, at long last, I don't have to work anymore. The question is that God's idea? Anyway, I'm going to get to the next slide, but there's two hopes that I have for this message. First of all, I hope that regardless of your station in life, we know some of you are retired, some of you clearly are not retired, that includes me. Some of you might be employed, some unemployed, some, raising a family. There may be many things that are your everyday life. I hope you find something of value and meaning when you reflect on God's mission for you as you work. Secondly, I hope you leave with a positive view of work, because I think many of us don't have a positive view of what is considered work. Okay, so on to the next slide. What's so good about work anyway, right? Isn't work a curse? Anyway, we often use the work. Okay, so when you ask somebody, for example, the question, where do you work? We mean, where do you go for gainful employment? Where do you go where somebody actually pays you to do something? Well, Christopher Wright wanted to expand this idea of work to not only include just what people pay you to do, but all of our creative efforts and productive efforts that we do collaboratively in what he calls the public square. So you have a picture up there of everybody out there in society doing, contributing, creating. And so he explores that idea of public square. Actually, in the Old Testament, the term that is used is the gate. And this was eye-opening for me Because I just think, hey, a gate is a door. You open the gate, you can come in and go out. That's all a gate is. But in Old Testament usage, the gate, there's a lot that happens at the gate. In fact, the whole life of the community happens at the gate. Decisions are made at the gate. Commerce is done at the gate. There's public markets. Weddings are announced at the gate. That is the life of the community. So it's a new lens for, I would challenge you, when you read particularly the Old Testament, when it talks about the gate, look at it not just as an entrance into the city, but the life of the city happens right there. All right, work, let's go to the next slide. Okay, work is God's idea. So, first of all, does God even care what happens in the public square? If you like, consider the marketplace. Does God care what happens in your workplace? What happens at City Hall? Does God care? Now, if you're honest, even I have this lurking in the back of my mind, you might think, well, maybe, but God's much more interested in saving souls and what happens in the church building than what happens out there. So here's what Wright had to say about this. He said, the Bible clearly and comprehensively in both Testaments portrays God as intensely interested in the public arena of human and social and economic life. Here, I like this. He's interested, he's involved, he's in charge, and he has big plans for what happens out there. Like that, it's not just somewhat interested. He's very interested, he's involved, he's in charge, he's full of plans for it. In fact, if you look at the Old Testament prophets, did they spend a lot of time getting on people's case about how they do their religious life and what they do in the temple? No. A lot of the emphasis of the Old Testament prophets is how Israel is messing up in the marketplace. There's injustice, there's unfair scales. So what happens in the marketplace at the gate is a lot more important to God in Old Testament than what happens actually in the temple. So next bullet, please. So this should be good. First of all, before I go on to the next one, this is good news. Because guess what? I think most of us would agree we spend a lot of time and energy in the workplace, in everyday life. And if what God cares about is not that, but something we do in our spare time, that's a little depressing and it's discouraging. But good news is God really cares about what you do 9 to 5. So work is part of God's plan. We have Genesis. Thank you, Susan, for reading Genesis chapter 1, 26 to 28. You heard it, I think, when Rick Faw came here, and the focus there, and actually, if you could bring up the passage, that would be great, Kenneth, was on caring for creation. So you know what? God had a mission for us the very moment He created us. Before sin came to this world, we have actually in Genesis 1:26. So we were created, the question is, why? We were created in God's image, it says in verse 26, in our likeness, so that, why? We may rule. And then if we look at verse 27, we are created male and female so that we may rule, so that we may govern. And then in verse 28, here's what many of us are familiar with. God blessed them and said to them, and here is our mission, the mandate for all mankind, male and female, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. I would just add that subdue is also understood as govern, bring under control, so that as representatives of God, we can manage effectively all that God has made. So here's the one idea that I would leave with you. I think we often think, this tells us we should care for the environment, which is true. But I would challenge you to think God also cares about the society. God's mandate is all of that. It does not only include the animals and the trees, it is that, but it is all of economic activity as well. So, and I should add that that mandate didn't disappear with sin. When to Noah, God made a covenant with Noah also, and he said the exact same thing, which is after sin had happened, after fall, after the curse, he still said the same thing, be fruitful and increase in number. The mandate hadn't changed, but work had become more difficult because of sin. We messed it up. So, all work can glorify God. That's the last point, and I want to move on to the next slide. So, work is God's idea, but work is also worship and witness. So, just a few reflections on my own work, and I encourage you to reflect on your work and ask, how does God care about what I do every day? If I'm paid or unpaid, whatever you do, how does God care? And how does it benefit society? How does it help others? So I work at Fortinet. I work at a cybersecurity company. So as a company, I would just state that we help businesses do commerce on the internet and do it safely and without interruption. Right? If you couldn't do it that way, all commerce would break down and you couldn't use the internet at all. We know internet's a powerful tool. Now, as a team, as a support team that I manage, we help make IT teams, other computer workers, makes their job easier because it's very complex. There are a lot of tools out there. People are understaffed, really stressed out. We help their life, make it easier for them to do the right thing. And then I, as a manager, have the opportunity to remove barriers. If my staff encounter a barrier, they can't help their client, their customer, our customer, because of, say, a bug in our software, I can chase that down with the teams that look after that. We sing about God being a way maker, creating ways to move forward. And I feel like my job in some way reflects some of that character of God, making paths possible for things to happen. Well, it's not just what we do that pleases God, but it's how we do it, and that's where it becomes worshipful. If we look at 1 Corinthians 10:31, and you're probably familiar with this, so whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for what? The glory of God, right? You know that verse. Paul goes on to say, in fact, his motivation, not only to seek his own good, but the good of many. So what you can do can, one, glorify God and can benefit the many. And then there's in Colossians, Paul speaking again. He said, whatever you do, whether in word and deed, do it all in the name of the Lord, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Now, what does it mean to do something in the name of the Lord? Does it mean every time you do a service, say, I do this in the name of Jesus? Or, you finish a project, say, I did this in the name of Jesus. No, it's not just verbally saying in the name of Jesus. I think we understand that, right? It means doing it in the character of God. While representing Jesus, we do this task. Do we do this at a task that would really glorify Jesus? Would Jesus be proud of us if we did it in that way? And this idea is elaborated further in Colossians 3. Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. Have anybody? Perhaps some of you have thought this way, right? It's different if you're doing it for God and not just your employer. I'm sure all of us have had irksome tasks that they have to do, their management required or their business requires it, they're not happy about it. Now, if God was asking you to do it, would you think of it differently? I know I would. So I think that's very helpful, that everything we do is for God and can be worshipful. We can bring in prayer and thanksgiving into every activity that we're involved in. I know when the ripple effect came out and some of us were doing that course, I started praying before I started my day, as I arrived at the workplace, and it really changed how I looked at my day ahead. I said, God, what do you want me to do today? And please give me the strength to do what pleases you today. So the next bullet on this one, we have the opportunity, and I'm a little short on time, but my challenge to you is not only consider how your work can be worship to God, be on the lookout for what everybody else is contributing in their day-to-day lives, and celebrate and affirm it. I would say that for the half of you that put up your hands saying you were retired, you have a special opportunity to affirm and encourage those who are still in the workforce and find out more. Be curious. Be fascinated with what they do and say, that is beautiful, that glorifies God. So you have a chance to affirm that. And here's a little challenge for you to think upon. I know that some professions are easier to imagine how they might be pleasing and glorifying to God. I mean, healthcare and counseling, firefighters and police officers, we all feel innately, these are good things, that's helpful. But what about commerce and law and banking? Isn't that just all about money? Politics, isn't that kind of dirty? How do we affirm and glorify what is good in those professions? Move on to the next slide, please. And again, on to the next slide. So, my third point is work, is exploring, and final point is about work, is getting ready for Jesus' return. What is work like in light of Jesus' return? Now, why this picture? Now, at first, Jen, my wife, did not want me to put this photo on the wall because, yes, this is our backyard. Okay, we're not very happy about this. Our retaining wall is crumbling. Okay, those are, I don't know if you can see, but there's beams there that are rotting, and they're actually falling out even as they're standing. The one that's falling down is because there's not even a beam left underneath it. In fact, the wood is probably doing nothing to hold up the hillside at all. It's probably all tree roots that's holding up So we have to do something about that, but here's the problem. This is kind of depressing for us. We don't feel like doing any gardening right now because anything we do is going to have to be torn up whenever that retaining wall is replaced. It all has to go. It's discouraging. I wonder, does this picture resonate with you as you look at society? Is there anything that's rotten and falling apart out there that when you look at the society around you? And then what is your response? Do you feel like, I'm not going to worry about what happens there. It's all a mess, and I'm going to heaven anyway. So here's where I'd like to go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, the two bullets I've kind of explored. It's a view of society. Well, here's the thing. If we keep going, Jesus is going to redeem all things. And here is the part about getting ready for his return. So Colossians is good news. Colossians 1 has, and through him to reconcile all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven. Jesus is going to reconcile all things. And we'll see in the context of Colossians, it really does mean all things, heavenly, on earth, all sorts of things. It includes our society and government. And then Revelations 8:21, we have that what we look forward to is that the creation, which has been groaning, will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of God. So my main point here is God's going to redeem it. Don't give up on it. And by redeem it, it doesn't mean like he's going to blow it all away. And this is something that I've been thinking through. I've often thought, Jesus is going to start all over again. Just get rid of all that stuff that happened on earth. It's all a mess anyway. But that's not the idea. There's this idea of purifying by fire. And then the next bullet, the encouragement is to stay involved in the city, and right, in fact, says, be constructively engaged while still being courageously confrontational. And I think sometimes, I would say, in our Mennonite brethren history, we have a tendency, as I understand it, has sometimes a tendency to withdraw from society as tainted by sin rather than engaged with it. Next slide, please. So we're going to prepare for the King's arrival. This was a new concept for me. I thought when Jesus is coming in, I just have to get my own stuff in order. But he's saying, no, this earth is mine. He's like a vineyard owner who went away to be anointed king, and he's coming back. So let's get the earth, let's get society ready for his return. And then this last one is from Revelations 21, nations, which is part of this Jesus' return. If we can bring up Revelations 21, this is also a game changer for me. I usually don't worry about end times. I'm like, what difference does it make to how I live now? But there's this concept of the kings entering this new heaven and new earth. God is somehow going to redeem and bring together in heaven and earth. Like we might go to another place or reality for a while, but we're going to come back and be reunited with earth, a redeemed earth. And here's what the kings are going to do. We have it in Kings 24. The kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. God's not building from scratch. Every society, as represented by their kings and leaders, will bring the very best. I don't know what Canada is going to bring, or the United States, or Morocco. All these different countries and ethnicities will bring their very best that they've created on earth before Jesus' return. They'll bring those things to God in the end. So we can contribute to the things that we contribute to on this earth will have some bearing in the afterlife. So finally, I want to finish with three applications. I appreciate your patience in all this. Just reiterating some applications. I'll go to the God is Mission slide. I've already mentioned it. My challenge, some of this might help you, and consider it if you like. Find a way to do your everyday work for the glory of God and seek to worship Him in it. 2, seek the beauty of work in your own work and affirm it in others. And thirdly, don't give up on the city that you live in, but engage with it. If we go to the very last slide, please, and the next one. Oh yeah, that's it, right there. So I'll leave you with 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, everyday life, work in the workplace, volunteer work in retirement, whatever it is, do it all for the glory of God. And as you do so, I hope that we can all, like Paul, seek the good of many and not just ourselves, as we wait for the Lord's return to claim this place that He owns. Thank you.